This video discusses President Putin's proposal for resolving the war in Iran, which I mentioned at the end of the previous video. Specifically, this refers to one of the main reasons behind the recent US-Israeli attack, the transfer of Iran's enriched uranium to Russia. As I reported previously, President Trump rejected this proposal. As a result, neither the United States nor Russia has officially disclosed any details regarding this proposal at this time. However, some news reports have touched on it in passing. First, regarding enriched uranium. Enriched uranium refers to the process of artificially enriching and increasing the amount of natural uranium-235. Natural uranium contains only 0.7% uranium-235, which undergoes fission and releases enormous amounts of thermal energy. The remainder consists of uranium-238, which does not undergo fission. Iran's uranium is currently enriched to 60%. Weapons-grade uranium requires an enrichment level of 90% or higher. It is said that if enrichment continues at this rate, it will reach a level capable of being converted into nuclear weapons within a few weeks. The stockpile is estimated to be approximately 440 to 450 kilograms. In terms of quantity, this is enough for more than 10 nuclear bombs. President Putin's proposal involves transferring this 60% enriched uranium from Iran to Russia, where it would be stored and converted into low-enriched uranium. Uranium enrichment is generally classified as follows: 3% to 5% for nuclear power generation, 20% for research reactors and medical applications, and 90% or higher for weapons-grade use. The objective is to reduce the enrichment level of uranium, currently at 60%, to a level suitable for peaceful uses. If this comes to pass, the U.S. ground invasion of Iran, currently being discussed, will no longer be necessary. However, the United States and Israel are seeking to either secure this Iranian enriched uranium for themselves or render it inoperable. From 2015, following the nuclear agreement reached under the Obama administration, until the Trump administration's unilateral withdrawal from the agreement in 2018, the enrichment level of uranium held by Iran was limited to a maximum of 3.67%. After the United States withdrew from the nuclear agreement, Iran maintained the agreement for 1 year, after which it gradually increased its enrichment levels, reaching 20% in 2020. The decision to proceed with enrichment up to 60% was triggered by the April 2021 bombing of an Iranian nuclear facility, known as the Natanz incident. This was the second attack following the U.S. withdrawal from the nuclear agreement. Along with the bombing in July 2020, the perpetrators are believed to be Israel, the Mossad. Following this incident, Iran announced in 2021 that it would increase its enrichment level to 60%. The IAEA has reported that Iran has maintained this 60% level through early 2026. So, what about Russia's technical capabilities and reliability? Russia is a nuclear weapon state and has a track record of storing Iran's low-enriched uranium under the 2015 nuclear agreement. It is one of the few countries with the technical capacity to do so. As many of you may know, the United States continues to purchase low-enriched uranium from Russia for use in nuclear power plants and other applications. It all began with the U.S.-Russia Uranium Conversion Agreement, which was formally signed on February 18, 1993. Under this agreement, which was concluded as part of nuclear disarmament efforts, Russia converted enriched uranium from surplus nuclear warheads into low-enriched uranium for use in nuclear power generation. The United States continued to purchase this material for 20 years, through 2013. After the agreement expired, the practice continued in a different form, with private companies also opting for Russian-produced enriched uranium, and continuing to purchase it. In connection with the conflict in Ukraine, the Biden administration has imposed a complete ban on the purchase of Russian-produced enriched uranium. However, purchases under existing contracts will be permitted until 2028. In other words, the United States has effectively guaranteed the technical capabilities and reliability of Russia's enriched uranium. President Putin had repeatedly put forward this proposal. This is not the first time President Putin has made this proposal during a phone call. Last year, during the US-Iran nuclear talks in May 2025, and before the US and Israel attacked Iran's nuclear facilities in June. And 10 days before the current war in Iran began, he had made a similar proposal. Quoted from an article published by Iran International on February 18, 2026. By the way, Iran International is a media outlet based in London, UK. It receives financial support from Saudi Arabia, and takes a stance opposed to the current Iranian government. Kremlin says, Russia ready to accept Iran's enriched uranium. Russia has expressed readiness to accept enriched uranium from Iran, as part of efforts to resolve Tehran's nuclear issue. But the outcome of negotiations between the United States and Iran should not be prejudged, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Wednesday. We had an initiative and stated our readiness to accept enriched uranium, that was discussed, Peskov told reporters. He said resolving the Iranian nuclear issue was a matter for talks between Tehran and Washington, and added it would be wrong to anticipate the outcome. The Wall Street Journal reported earlier that Iran had signaled readiness to pause enrichment and transfer part of its stockpile to a third party such as Russia. On February 27, the day before the recent U.S.-Israeli attack, the American publication The Hill reported the following. Iran agreed to zero stockpiling of nuclear material in U.S. talks, Omani foreign minister. Oman's foreign minister said Friday that Iran is offering to give up stockpiling enriched uranium as part of a deal with the U.S. related to its nuclear program. Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi is serving as the mediator between U.S. and Iranian officials in Geneva. Now we are talking about zero stockpiling, and that is very, very important, because if you cannot stockpile material that is enriched, then there is no way you can actually create a bomb. Al-Busaidi told Margaret Brennan of CBS's Face the Nation. Please watch the actual interview with Foreign Minister al-Busaidi.
And joining me now is the Foreign Minister of Oman, Badr al-Busaidi, who is the mediator negotiating a nuclear deal between the United States and Iran. Welcome to Face the Nation.
Thank you.
What has Iran agreed to you that they have never done before? Can you give us any sense?
The single most important achievement, I believe, is the agreement that Iran will never ever have a nuclear material that will create a bomb. This is, I think, a big achievement. This is something that is not in the old deal that was negotiated during President Obama's time. This is something completely new. It really makes the enrichment argument less relevant, because now we are talking about zero stockpiling. And that is very, very important, because if you cannot stockpile material that is enriched, then there is no way you can actually create a bomb, whether you enrich or don't enrich. And I think this is really something that has been missed a lot by the media, and I want to clarify that from the standpoint of a mediator.
So explain that. So the enriched material, the things that could be used as nuclear fuel for a bomb, you're saying Iran would not keep on their own soil?
They would give it up.
They would give it up?
They will not be able to actually accumulate that material that will enable them to create a bomb. There's no accumulation. So there will be zero accumulation, zero stockpiling, and full verification. That is also equally important achievement, I think. A full and comprehensive verification by the IAEA, which is the agency in charge of this file.
The UN nuclear watchdog.
That's right.
So you're saying all enriched material would be shipped someplace else, not Russia, but...
No, the current stockpiles that still exist.
The things that are still in Iran.
I think that there is agreement now that this will be downblended to the lowest level possible,
okay,
to a neutral level, a natural level, which means, and converted into fuel, and that fuel will be irreversible.
That would be significant if Iran agreed to that.
It is very significant, and I think we have agreement on that, in my view.
In your view?
Yes.
Because today, CBS confirmed a confidential report from the IAEA says inspectors report seeing Iran conducting regular activity at bombed uranium enrichment sites. But Iran has refused to tell us what has happened to their stockpile. They have refused to allow UN inspectors in to look at it. Are you telling me that inspectors would be given access to these sites, like at Isfahan?
If there is a deal, an agreed deal, there will be full access.
Iran has offered that?
Yes.
So who would these inspectors be? It would be UN?
IAEA.
IAEA?
But I think, there is room also, if there is a deal in place, I am quite confident from my point of view that even United States inspectors will have access at some point in the process if we have a deal that is respected and fair and endurable. I see no reason why there is no access to be given even to the United States itself.
Iran has never allowed American weapons inspectors on their soil. They wouldn't let President Obama do that. You think Iran would let President Trump send American inspectors into Iran?
This is why I think this is a much, much better deal, because I think Iran is open to the idea in a way that never have been the case in the past.
Despite the fact that these negotiations had taken place, the United States launched an attack on Iran the very next day. Given this, was there really a reason to suddenly kill the supreme leader and key figures in the regime? President Trump said the following at a press conference on March 9th.
Yeah, please.
You said earlier that we've already won in many ways, but we haven't won enough. What do you consider enough? What's your baseline?
Where they're not going to be starting the following day to develop a nuclear weapon. Where they'll look at that man and some other people from the administration and say, all right, we're not going to do it. They were not willing to say that. And when Steve called up and he said that to me, I said, well, here we go. Let's do it the hard way. But the hard way, I think, is probably the easy way. When basically I can see that they will no longer have any capacity whatsoever for a very long period of time.
How did Steve Witkoff convey the details of these negotiations to President Trump? On March 18th, Rafael Grossi, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, mentioned the fact that negotiations had taken place during an interview with PBS in the United States.
When we last met, you had talked about being blindsided by the previous round of strikes. What was your reaction to these new attacks?
Well, obviously, as Director General of the IAEA, I'm not informed in advance of military operations. So, of course, from that moment on, we have been following this intensively. As you know, we were part of a negotiating process. I had been invited to participate in the two last rounds of consultations, negotiations that were taking place in Geneva, mediated by the Foreign Minister of Oman, and with the participation of Dr. Kushner from the United States, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Foreign Minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi. So that was a pretty intense exercise, which obviously did not come to fruition.
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had prohibited the possession of nuclear weapons, and had also proposed the abandonment of nuclear materials. President Putin's proposal seems to be not only a show of support for Iran but also a lifeline for President Trump.